Hello guys, Warhammer here. We will be doing an in-depth breakdown of the Tides of Torment DLC, which has just come out. We will be taking a close look at the trailer to point out some of the things that are brand new, and other things that may have been rumored, but are now confirmed. Getting into the trailer itself, after the first cinematic part, we first open up with the High Elves after Aislinn has come back from basically the dead. He is now the Herald of Manan, as you can see by the glowing runes on his armor. But we see him flying down as a part of the Lothern Skycutters. You can tell it is him mounted on the one that's in frame because it has him with his two swords. So we know that will be a mount for him. Once we get to the frame where he's flying over the High Elf army, there is one unit we can spot right away that has not been confirmed or talked about before. That is the Ship's Company. Like Sea Lord Aislinn, they come from the Storm of Chaos supplement in 6th edition tabletop. Now we know these are a brand new unit because they don't actually have the helmets of any of the Spearmen, Sea Guard, or the Rangers. They are a light infantry, sword and shield unit, most likely tier 1 or 2. And right after them we see some units that Creative Assembly has already talked about. First we have the Oceanids, which are like a monster's infantry unit, and then the Sea Elemental, which is a single entity monster. And then right below that we have the Mist Mage, who's coming with a brand new lore of magic. Switching over to Norsca, right as the camera starts to pan down, of course, we get our good look at Sel the Faithless, a Famir Noble, who was the hero confirmed in a previous video by Creative Assembly. And then to the right of Sel, we have the Kurstetten, which is a unit we'll talk about in just a little bit. I want to focus on what's actually right below him. So this unit right there on the right of the portal is actually a Bearman of Urslo, one of the members of the tribe of Beorg Bearstruck, who is likely going to be our legendary hero. So these guys come from the Dogs of War in 5th edition, and we know these are the Bearmen of Urslo because of their armor design, specifically their helmets. You'll see this guy right up front who has more of a Crusader look helmet, which matches perfectly this model from the Dogs of War. Then we have another guy right after who has the shaved head with the ponytail remaining. And as we get to this following shot, we see the Kurstetten, which appeared just right before, but we see actually another variant of it. They are a giant-like unit that comes from the Monstrous Arcanum, but as you can see with this second one up front, he is a different color, and you can actually see him use a little bit of magic. Now, coming from the Monstrous Arcanum, you actually had the option to make them a low-level wizard of the Lore of Death, Shadows, or Beast Magic, which by the visuals here is probably the Lore of Death based on the purpley color. But we don't know whether this is a variant of the Kurstetten or whether it's a Regiment of Renown. I probably think it's a variant with some bound spells. And then moving on to Slaanesh, of course we open up here with Decala or Dechala, however you want to pronounce it, letting us see her combat animations a little more at depth. Right after we actually follow up with the Praeton. This is also another monster that comes from the Monstrous Arcanum. Now this is a Chaos and Beastmen affiliated monster, and likely they put it with Slaanesh based on some of the options or special rules it could get. It could actually get something called Insane Bloodlust, which basically put it into a frenzy and fury in combat, which kind of makes sense with Decala based on her lore and her elixirs, which give her insane combat bonuses. So I can kind of see that tie into it, even on the surface level if it doesn't make a lot of sense. After the Praeton flies overhead, we actually get a good look at the second legendary lord coming for Slaanesh, the Mask of Slaanesh. The Mask of Slaanesh is this unit that's right up front and center that has two arms on one side, one that's kind of like wielding a baton-like thing. Right after that, in the background on the right, we actually see Pleasure Seekers. Now, Pleasure Seekers are basically demonettes on top of these monstrous cavalry mounts, which are called Steeds of Slaanesh. After we see the Mask do their little twirly animation attack, on the right, we have this mortal-looking unit in the chapless leg armor, which is most likely our legendary hero, Striker. He first appeared in the 6th edition Storm of Chaos as one of the lieutenants of Archaon. He's a chieftain of a chaos tribe known as the Swordsvanir, and we know it is him because of the banner he has on his back. Now, this banner was also worn by the generic Lord of Slaanesh on Demonic Steed in the Storm of Chaos, but this is almost assuredly Striker because if we actually look at him, he does not have a helmet on, and instead he has a shaved head with the ponytail, which is a distinguishing feature of his model when it was on foot. And then right after, as he goes out of frame, we have the Champion of Slaanesh, which we can see up close right here. Now, while it was originally confirmed to be a single entity unit like the Ogre Eshin Maneater, we see them in kind of a group, so that may have changed. They may be like a group of 3 or something. But that is just speculation on my part, so don't take it as hard truth. And then as the Mask of Slaanesh goes out of frame, on the left we can see Slongors. These are the Slaanesh variant of the Beastmen. They have dual weapons, so we can probably expect them to be anti-infantry. Now when the trailer switches back to the High Elf and Dark Elves, we see Lokir fighting what is actually a Shimp's company. So we can see him with the shield. He has the lighter armor with blonde hair and no helmet. So that is the same unit that we see earlier with Aislinn flying overhead on the Lothern Skycutter. As the camera goes back to Aislinn, who's coming back for revenge, we see a big old merworm behind him. So this is a monster that originally came in the Storm of Chaos, but that also came back in 8th edition for the Monsters Arcanum. So these are basically like a dragon unit that comes from the sea, but they can actually come onto land. They're supposed to be a really fast unit that hits really hard. They also have regeneration, which is pretty amazing. Now they also had the option for different variants that could give them things like poison attacks or a cold aura, and another thing called the Abyssal Cloak, which would affect the leadership of enemy units and drop them. Overall, I think we can expect this unit to be hard-hitting, but a little bit lighter on armor than a normal dragon, but they have regeneration and they have some good abilities to help scare away those units that they do come into contact with. And that is it for the trailer. Now, I just kind of wanted to do a real quick overview of a list of the 3 races and kind of what we know for sure and what is likely or confirmed. So starting with the High Elves, things that are confirmed, we know the legendary lord is Sea Lord Aislinn. The generic hero is our Mist Mage, who comes with a new lore of magic. Then we have the Merworm, which we just talked about, the Sea Elemental, which is a single entity monster. Then we have the Oceanids, which are a monster-sized unit, along with the Lothern Skycutter, which likely has 2 variants, the Archer variant and then the Bolt Thrower on the back, giving it some artillery options. And then last of all, the Ship's Company, which are the Sword and Shield Bolter infantry likely to come. As far as the High Elf things, which have not been confirmed or talked about, we do not know who the legendary hero for the High Elves will be, but is likely going to be Caradrian, who is the captain of the Phoenix Guard, or Cor Herlion, who is the captain of the White Lions, the protectors of the Phoenix King. I personally think it's going to be Caradrian because he kind of fills a new niche. He is a heavily armored anti-large unit who also has a Phoenix mount. And the other thing we do not know for sure is the generic lord for the High Elves. Now, this could be an Anointed of Asuryan, so they'd be like a generic version of Caradrian. So heavily armored, anti-large, and they get a Flamespire Phoenix mount. But it could also be the Sea Helm. Now, the Sea Helm was actually a hero choice in 8th edition. It was kind of just like a hero version of a Lothern Sea Guard. But Creative Assembly has changed things around sometimes, so he may end up being a generic lord, but that's up in the air, so we don't know. Going on to Norsca. So our legendary lord is confirmed to be Sel the Faithless. And alongside him will come the Chaos Spawn Nightmaw, who you saw earlier. When they first announced Sale the Faithless, Nightmaw was said to be a summon for sale, similar to Krell and Heinrich Kemmler. And for our generic hero, we have the Famir Noble. Following that, for units for Norsca, we have the Cursed Etten, which is the giant-like unit that we mentioned before. It may come with another variant called the Rune Caller, which has access to some magic, or it may be a Regiment of Renown, we don't know that for sure. Next to the Ettens, we saw the Bearmen of Urslo. Now, these could be a regular unit, they could be a Regiment of Renown. I think they'll be a regular unit. And because we see the Bearmen of Urslo in the trailer, I'm 100% convinced that the legendary hero for Norsca will be Beorg Bearstruck, who is the chieftain of their tribe. He's a werebear that's supposed to be insanely powerful, so we can probably expect him to be super powerful in melee. But he actually had a follower who was his battle standard bearer called Eor the Young, who carried the bear banner. And it basically gave rage or frenzy to nearby units. So that's something we may see him as a follower or as a ancillary banner that you can equip onto units to provide that nearby aura. And then for our generic lord, it is most likely going to be a lord level version of the shaman, so like a shaman lord. I'm pretty much sure that's going to be it because for Sel the Faithless as part of the trailer, we see a brand new model for the shaman lord who is in the center, who Sel betrays, so it's likely that is going to be the model used for a generic lord. And moving lastly on to Slaanesh. So confirmed for Slaanesh, we know the headliner lord for the DLC is the Chala Dakala, whatever you want to call her. She is a former princess of the Elves who was corrupted and mutated by Slaanesh. The FLC lord has been confirmed by Creative Assembly outside of the trailer to be the Mask of Slaanesh, who, like I said, will get their own unique mechanic based on rituals and dances moving around quickly. For our legendary hero, I'm 100% convinced that who's going to be Striker of the Swordsveneer. Like I said, he was a lieutenant of Archaon during the Storm of Chaos. Now he starts on foot, but will likely get a steed of Slaanesh mount like he had on the tabletop. Onto the units, we have the Praeton. Now, the Praeton is the mutated deer flying creature that we see flying overhead of the Slaanesh army. And we have the Champion of Slaanesh, who is the four-armed snake swordsman guy who follows after the mask in the trailer. Now, Creative Assembly, they are going to be a powerful single entity unit, but we do see them in the trailer in a group, so maybe things have changed. Maybe they come in like a duo or a trio. Another unit confirmed, but not in the trailer, are the Devotees of Slaanesh. These are basically Dark Elf cultists that have the crossbows. For the Slaanesh things which have not been confirmed yet, we have the Generic Lord, and the Slaanesh Generic Lord for this is most likely going to be Chaos Sorcerer Lord of Slaanesh if it follows the same pattern that the other Chaos Gods received, having both a melee and a spellcasting variant of the Lord. Now, since a significant portion of the DLC is actually based on the Storm of Chaos campaign, I actually think that the Chaos Sorcerer Lord of Slaanesh actually might be based on the Druchii Anointed. So these were basically superpowered Dark Elves who had absorbed the power of Slaanesh over a long period. Now, baseline in the tabletop, they were just a powerful melee lord, but you could give them the option to make them a caster. I don't know if this is likely, but I think it would be cool if they did incorporate that part of the Druchii Anointed into the Chaos Sorcerer Lord of Slaanesh. For the generic hero, like the other Chaos Gods, we generally get an Exalted Champion and an Exalted Sorcerer of the Chaos God. We already have the Sorcerer of Slaanesh, so I expect them to be like Striker, where they can get a demonic monstrous steed in the Steed of Slaanesh. Although we have already seen the Pleasure Seekers of Slaanesh, which are the demonettes mounted on Steeds of Slaanesh, I also think it's very likely we get a mortal unit variant of that, so basically Chaos Knights on Steeds of Slaanesh. I think that'd be pretty cool, and it would play along the similar theme that all the other Chaos Gods, where they got a super late tier mortal infantry on a thematic mount from that Chaos God, similar to the Doom Knights of Tzeentch or the Rut Knights for Nurgle. But that is going to be it for our in-depth breakdown of the Tides of Torment trailer. I am cautiously optimistic about this DLC. They did delay it to December, which hopefully means it'll come out really polished and without issues. But Creative Assembly still does need to prove to us as a community that they're not just going to fall back into their old ways and let bugs become super prominent and interfere with our enjoyment of the game. So I'm Warhammer. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Hit a like if you have, and I'll see you in the next video.